Every ancient Indian astronomy text places Lanka at 0 degrees latitude, 0 degrees longitude, directly on the equator. Sri Lanka is not on the equator. It is not even close. So if Lanka was not Sri Lanka, where was Ravana's kingdom and what happened to it? We explored this question in an earlier video, and the response was extraordinary. Tens of thousands of you demanded we go deeper. So we did. This is not a recap. This is the full case, built from the primary astronomical texts, the geological record, and evidence most researchers have never addressed. For most people, the answer is obvious: Sri Lanka. The island sits just off the southern tip of India, it carries the name, and popular tradition has placed Ravana's kingdom there for as long as anyone can remember. It is a reasonable assumption, and for a long time, even serious researchers accepted it without much scrutiny. But when you look closely at the original texts, the astronomy, the geology, and the historical record, the picture becomes far more complicated than a simple island off the coast of Tamil Nadu. Let us start with what the ancient Indian astronomy texts actually say. Across multiple authoritative works, including the Surya Siddhanta, the Aryabhatiya, and the Laghu Bhaskara, Lanka is described as a reference point for astronomical calculations. Not a kingdom, not a city of gold, a fixed coordinate. These texts define an ancient prime meridian that passes through 3 locations, repeated again and again: Kurukshetra in the north, Ujjain in central India, and Lanka at the equator. Lanka is placed at 0 degrees latitude and 0 degrees longitude. The Sanskrit term used in the Surya Siddhanta is Niraksha, meaning without latitude. In other words, Lanka was not merely south of India, it was on the equator itself, directly along the same meridian as Ujjain. If you draw that line southward from Ujjain and follow it to the equator, you do not arrive at Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka sits several degrees east of that line and well north of the equator. The coordinates do not match. This is not a fringe observation. Every major Indian astronomy text uses Lanka as a baseline for time correction calculations, the ancient equivalent of time zones. The Laghu Bhaskara even provides specific corrections for how much time shifts as you move away from the prime meridian. Lanka was the anchor point of an entire astronomical coordinate system. To dismiss its described location as symbolic or approximate would require explaining why every other reference point on the same meridian, Kurukshetra and Ujjain, corresponds to a real, identifiable place. Now turn to the Valmiki Ramayana itself. When Sugriva sends search parties to find Sita, he gives detailed geographical instructions to the group heading south. He does not say, cross the narrow strait to the island nearby. He describes a journey that follows the Western Ghats, passes through the Malaya Mountains, reaches the Mahendra Mountain at the southern tip, and then continues a great distance further south, 100 yojanas into the ocean. Whether that distance is literal or figurative, the direction is unmistakable. It points far to the south and southwest, well beyond the location of modern Sri Lanka. The Ramayana uses the term Nairutya to describe the direction of Lanka, meaning southwest. Ravana and his people are called Nairutyas, the people of the southwest. Sri Lanka lies to the southeast of the Indian mainland, not the southwest. This is not a minor discrepancy. It is a fundamental directional contradiction with the primary source text. There is another piece of evidence that most people overlook entirely. The star Agastya, known in Western astronomy as Canopus, plays a critical role in the Ramayana's geography. Sugriva tells the southern search party that they will be able to see Agastya only after they reach the Mahendra Mountain at the southernmost tip of the Indian mainland. The text describes Agastya as being so close to the southern celestial pole that it has effectively become a pole star of the south. This is not poetic language. It is a precise astronomical observation, and it corresponds to only one period in history. Due to the precession of Earth's axis, Canopus occupied that position relative to the southern celestial pole around 12,209 BC, the 13th millennium before the Common Era. This is independently corroborated by the Surya Siddhanta, which records a time when 2 bright stars served as pole stars simultaneously: Abhijit, which is Vega in the north, and Agastya, which is Canopus in the south. Multiple data points from independent sources converge on the same date, 13,000 years ago. Now here is where the geology becomes essential. 14,000 years ago, during and just after the last glacial maximum, global sea levels were approximately 120 to 140 meters lower than they are today. At that depth, the shallow seabed between India and Sri Lanka was entirely dry land. There was no strait, there was no ocean crossing. Sri Lanka was physically connected to the Indian mainland by a continuous land bridge, and it extended much further south than the current coastline suggests. Research by Professor Ramaswamy of Tamil Nadu has mapped the ancient river systems that once flowed across this now submerged land. The Tamraparni and Vaigai rivers, which today empty into the ocean near the southern tip of India, once continued across dry land that is now seabed. His work has also documented sophisticated port structures on the eastern coast of Tamil Nadu, dating back as far as 20,000 years, submerged in successive stages as sea levels rose. The first port was lost, then a second, then a third, each matching known periods of coastal flooding. Coastal civilizations were not merely possible at these dates. They are documented. If Ravana's Lanka was on the equator along the ancient prime meridian, it would have been located on land that is now beneath the Indian Ocean, east of modern-day Malaysia and south of Sumatra. That land existed 14,000 years ago. It does not exist today. The Sunda Shelf, which connected modern Indonesia to mainland Asia, was submerged during this same period. Entire landmasses that supported human populations disappeared beneath rising waters over the course of a few thousand years. The historical record adds another layer of complexity. The name Sri Lanka is remarkably recent. The island was known as Simhaladvipa for centuries, and Arab traders called it Serendip. The Europeans named it Ceylon. It was only in 1972 that the country officially adopted the name Sri Lanka. Going further back, the Greek geographer Ptolemy, writing around 2,000 years ago, referred to an island he called Taprobane, likely derived from Tamraparni. His maps place Taprobane in a position that roughly corresponds to modern Sri Lanka, but later European cartographers noted discrepancies. Some classified Taprobane as a phantom island because its described position did not match improved maps of the region. Others identified it with Sumatra rather than Sri Lanka. The location was never as settled as modern assumption suggests. More telling is what Indian writers themselves recorded. Between the 8th and 12th centuries, multiple poets and dramatists distinguished between Lanka and Singhal as two separate places. The 9th century writer Murari describes Rama flying over Singaladvipa only after leaving Lanka, implying they are not the same location. Rajashekara, writing in the 9th and 10th centuries, has Ravana himself describe Lanka as being to the south of Singhal. In his works, the kings of Lanka and Singhal are mentioned separately, and Ravana speaks of the Singhal king as a person other than himself. The distinction does not end with drama and poetry. In the accounts of Agastya's travels, 7 islands are visited, and Singhal and Lanka are referred to separately as distinct locations. The Srimad Bhagavatam, as told by Shukamuni, also treats Singhal and Lanka as 2 different places. These are not obscure references. They come from major literary and scriptural works of classical Indian civilization, spanning centuries and genres, and they consistently treat Lanka and the island we now call Sri Lanka as 2 different places. Even the Mahabharata, set approximately 7,500 years ago, is vague about the exact location of Lanka. When Sahadeva travels south during the Rajasuya campaign, he meets Vibhishana, but the text provides no clear geographical description of where Lanka is. By the time of the Mahabharata, it appears that the precise location of Ravana's Lanka had already become uncertain, which makes sense if the original site had been submerged thousands of years before the Mahabharata events took place. When all of this evidence is assembled together, the conventional identification of Ravana's Lanka with modern Sri Lanka becomes difficult to maintain. The ancient astronomy texts place Lanka on the equator along a specific meridian. Sri Lanka is not on the equator. The Ramayana describes Lanka as lying to the southwest. Sri Lanka is to the southeast. The star Agastya's position as a southern pole star dates the Ramayana's observations to approximately 12,000 BC, a time when sea levels were low enough for equatorial land south of India to exist. Indian writers for over 1,000 years distinguished between Lanka and the island of Singhal, and the Mahabharata, set thousands of years after the Ramayana, already treats Lanka's location as unclear. None of this proves definitively where Ravana's Lanka stood. The equatorial land that may have held it is now beneath the ocean, and underwater archaeology in that region remains in its earliest stages. But the evidence does prove something important. It proves that the automatic equation of Ravana's Lanka with modern Sri Lanka is not supported by the texts, the astronomy, the geology, or the historical record. Every major line of evidence points somewhere else, to a location on the equator, along the ancient prime meridian, on land that no longer exists above water. The question is not whether this challenges popular belief. It does. The question is whether popular belief can withstand the weight of the primary sources. Because the Surya Siddhanta does not guess, the Valmiki Ramayana does not approximate, and the precession of the stars does not lie. Wherever Ravana's Lanka once stood, the evidence says it was not where we have been looking.